Good morning, and to our friends joining us abroad, good evening. Welcome to Merage Talks. Today, we welcome Tovit Nizer, Business Development Specialist, author of Have You Seen Grandpa Lately, to touch on the subject, How I BizDev'd My Novel. So thank you so much, Tovit, for joining us today. Thank you very much. Let's get started.
Okay, hi everyone. You can hear me properly? Wonderful. Okay. So yes, topic is how I BizDev'd. This is a new verb. I made up my novel, and the novel's name is Have You Seen Grandpa Lately? In Hebrew is, hold on, מתי בפעם האחרונה ראית את סבא? For those of you who knows Hebrew, so it's available now, currently only in Hebrew. But I want to start because the Zoom is so strange and we're not meeting in person and face to face. I want to start with a question, and you can each answer through the chat, and tell me what is your deferred dream, because we each have one. As a child, as an adult, there's something we long for. There's something we kind of put aside for one day, for the time that we retire, for the time that we have time or energy or enough money, whatever comes in mind. But I'm sure you each and everyone here has a dream that they kind of keep in store in the garage, in the attic somewhere. So you're very welcome to share through the chat, and Christy can help with that. Maybe Christy has a dream that's deferred before I shared mine. Do you want to start?
A deferred dream. Well, you bring up a really good point, actually. Yeah, if you wanted to make your comments in the chat, but of course, we'd love for you to also unmute yourself and engage and participate. That would be wonderful.
I guess you know mine, but I'll talk about it in a second. So that's not even. But anything you wish you want to do, and I don't know, by the time you're 50 or 60 or 70, you promise yourself you're going to go on that around the world trip, or buy yourself something, or kind of move to a yacht, or go see the Himalayas, or start learning how to play the banjo, whatever, sing, karaoke. Okay, there's someone here, very brave. Let's see what they say. Finally reach first place in my sports instead of always fourth. Come on, Robert. Any medals? And I thought I'm competitive. Okay. Anyone else? Do 3 good things. Helping others while being free from financial considerations. Nice. Thank you, Mirelle. Okay. Well, we'll wait for another second before I share everything. Okay, so I'm taking this down. Okay. So my dream was to write a novel, because since ever I wanted to write, and I wrote. I was a journalist, and even as a child, and I thought writing something like a book or a novel is wonderful, and I should do that. But you know, life, and you're so busy, and family and work and career and university and whatever. There's so many excuses. I guess excuses are abandoned, and time is scarce, and you kind of not get where you want to. But deferred dreams usually come with a time frame by the age of when I'm this and that. And I knew that I want to do that and achieve that by the age of 40, which was last year. And why 40? Because my mom, she passed away suddenly at the age of 50 on her birthday. And for me, it was kind of a huge sticky note, not very yellow, more like dark and black, saying that this could end at any minute. And if you have a deferred dream, you kind of have to do that, because there are no excuses. Who knows if there is tomorrow? I mean, that was a strong enough sign for me to kind of say, you know what? You're saying it's going to be until you're 40. 40 is coming up in a few months. And just, do that. Just do that. I think back then I was much younger. But when I figured 40 is coming around the corner, I kind of said, okay, no excuses. Don't call it a deferred dream. Just do it. But having said that, and although many years passed between my mom's passing and this dream and coming of age 40, career was there and many things happened. And I'll tell you briefly what happened since. So this is me. I'm Tovit. I started as a journalist. I live in Israel, in Tel Aviv. I worked as a journalist, investigative journalist at Yediot Achronot. It's one of the biggest daily newspaper. After a few years of doing that, I initiated something that today would call a podcast, but it was kind of 10 years ago, and I didn't have kids, but I said that driving around in your car, having young kids in the back seat could be a huge drag. And someone needs to invent some kind of an audio CD. Back then, there were CDs going into the car, into the audio set, and to have games and riddles and songs, everything original for them to be excited and learn new things, while the parents focus on the ride and the road. And that's what I did. Today it's digital and it's 3 hours interactive content, and kids love it. Then I, based on that content experience, a content company called Gamba. It was going great until I got the startup bug, which is everywhere in Israel. You can't just ignore that. So the first startup was called Memontage. I just mentioned my mom. So that was a platform for memorial platform, digital memorial. It's like the digital Shiva. And I wanted to connect my late mom with my daughters, whom she never met. And it was supposed to be, and it was, a platform to collaborate and organize all the digital memories of that person, be it the recipes, audio, pictures, photos of them, of stuff they love, movies, clips. But the statistics says that, I don't know, 2% survive of these startups. So naturally it died. It was really, really difficult for me to kind of have another Shiva of something that I wanted to commemorate for her. But that's the statistics of startups, and there were problems there. The second startup was way far from something personal. It was technology to improve debt collection. And then I joined as the manager, VP of Business Development and Marketing at Nanofabrica. It's a startup that does ultra precise 3D printers, and it exited this year. It was sold a few months ago, so that's nice. And then I started the consultancy company that I own today, which is called Yellow Bricks. I help startups, usually at early stages, to meet investors, to meet their market, do projects involving business development, marketing, and content, and also give talks about that. But after closing down the second startup, the bug of the deferred dream came back and told me, you know what, time is up, or it's coming in 2 years, and you got to do something about that, because, you can't live forever, and you promised yourself. And I negotiated when I joined Nanofabrica to work for 80% of the week, and I saved 1 day for myself. And I said, you know what? Now I'm not doing my own thing. Someone else is paying for the first time in my life. So this is a good time to go and write. So I had Thursdays off only for that. And for 2 years, I wrote. In the beginning, it was, naturally, there's life and there's routine and there's home, and I have 2 kids, whatever excuses there are. And I didn't immediately start writing or continued writing the novel that I thought I would. But with time, and with time pressing and coming, I said, okay, you're gonna have to just grab it and write. And that's what I did. And the book was published this year, May. It was my 41st birthday. But when I was 40, I already held up this book. Not the final one, but I had it in my hand, and I knew from here on it's gonna be just rolling and it would happen. I did it. I did the time. I managed to publish it by time, and this year it was out. Okay, so the dream was there. I wrote, and just before diving into what I did, I want to talk about a few misconceptions while writing. So people always ask me now, and also back then when I worked and one day of the week was to write. So people say, is it your hobby? Because writing is never business. Is it professional? Because if it's a novel, it's probably, no, don't mix art with money. And it's probably for your soul, which is true. I mean, the answer is, it's not really my hobby, definitely for my soul. When I succeed in getting into places to get people to talk about it or do some kind of business matching with this book, people always ask me, how did they hear about you? Which is kind of nice, because the answer is they didn't. I told them. I mean, I did business development. I knocked on these doors. No one just landed something. It didn't just happen. There's a lot of work behind it. There's a lot of talk between authors, and I'm a member of many Facebook groups of authors, self-published authors. They always say, don't mix money. We don't want to talk about that. I mean, but these people actually invested tons of money to get self-published. They paid loads of money for editors, literary editors, proofreading, the printing, the shipping, everything. But then they have huge boxes at home of books that no one would read and no one knows about them, but they just don't want to mix that because it's art, and don't do that. And of course, people kind of say, with the first thing, is it your hobby? And for the soul, they always say, that's not money. I mean, you're not making money out of that, right? I mean, you're silly, because you seem like a logical person. So I don't know. I haven't made millions of that yet, but I kind of don't see the things not correspond, because this is me. I take Yellow Bricks and my business development abilities and skills together with the writing. And it's not like I mixed both. When I finished writing, I took off the literary hat, the author hat, put it aside, said, you know what, I really love the result. This is a good product. But I actually looked at it and responded to it as a product, because it's something, has a beginning, has an end, has value to others, and has some potential audience that it needs to meet. So I took all the skills of marketing, content development, and business development and put that hat on. Once I'm no longer the author, once the book is completed, the product is out, and I said, okay, I can't ignore what I have. I have to blend these two. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. I just want to say that this is the first time I talk about this combination, because usually at Yellow Bricks, I give talks and workshops about business development and about cold emails and reaching your market. Or I talk about the book, because I give talks about the book and the research behind it. And this time I do the combination, which is nice and refreshing. So I hope you enjoy it. Okay, first of all, I think we haven't really introduced what we're talking about, and that's the story itself. So Have You Seen Grandpa Lately is a family drama about an old grandfather who's 90 years old, and he disappears with his Filipino caregiver. It's not romantic, it's a romance, but it's not romantic. There's not, I'm just telling you, I won't share the ending. You'll have to read it by yourself. But there's nothing romantic there. It's more emotional. And this is Rothschild Boulevard. I don't know if you're from Israel or not. It's in Tel Aviv. In 2015, I walked there up and down the street many, many times because I walk around there in that neighborhood. And I kept seeing with time, more and more old people and their caregivers, usually from the Philippines, sit and occupy these benches. They became like a white noise. I kind of walked through and saw more and more people together, these duels of an old person covered with a blanket most of the times, and the Filipino caregivers talk around them. And in 2015, the idea sprang in my head, and I thought, what would happen if a couple like this, an old person and his caregiver, would just disappear? What would happen? I mean, would anyone ask where they are, or why would they do that, and how actively would they look for them? And I wrote immediately. I came back home, I wrote the first chapter, and it went into that deferred dream drawer. It was there. I said, one day I will do something. 2 years passed, and then I joined this writing group, and I wrote the second chapter, and then 2 years passed. And then I was 38, and I said, you know what? You promised. There's no tomorrow. You're going to have to start writing. And then for 2 years, while working on Thursdays, I wrote the book. So the book has two plots, parallel plots. One is the Israeli family who is in search of after their grandfather. And the second is the Filipino caregivers in Israel, their story. A lot about motherhood, a lot about long distance from your family. And what do you do as an Israeli when you have an old father or mother and you send someone from Asia to take care of them? And also that Filipino woman or women who drive and fly all across the universe to take care of someone else while their parents take care of their kids. It's crazy. It's so emotional. I was so invested in that, in this process. And but there's always a backstory to a story. I mean, it didn't just came up to my head one day. And the backstory is what's it really about. It's about my family. This is my mom's mom and my mom's father. This is Nathan and Tova, whom I'm named after her. And I did not meet her because she died before I was born, but my grandfather died when I was 12, and I didn't really get the chance to know him because he was a Holocaust survivor, and my mom just didn't want to mess us, me and my sister, with all these stories, and he never talked about that. It was kind of a black thing that you don't touch, and she didn't want to mix this world. She wanted us to be kids, and kids for her would be something fun and funny and joyful, and not Holocaust story. So we hardly saw him. I mean, it's not criticizing her because her life was busy as well, but I kind of missed him, kind of missed out on having a grandfather. And only years later, after he passed away, I accidentally met his brother, who looks almost the same. And I started visiting him while in university. And I realized he was so amazing and so funny and so cynical. And I had so much fun getting to know an old person, which my mom always kind of shined them out of us. So he was my, I don't know, the closure. But through this book, my aim, if there is an aim for an author, is to kind of wake up people before it's too late, for them to kind of get to know their old parents, old grandfathers, grandparents. That's my tiny request, and I hope that would help move something for parents to kind of teach their kids to spend more times with their grandchildren. But that's another lecture. So I just wanted to give you some context. So biz deving, my book. Sorry, this is in Hebrew, but I'll translate. I started with a plan, a strategic plan of marketing and business development. And I lined up the different personas. And I kind of wrote everything on the whiteboard and then started to get some sense out of it. One group of the personas that I thought would be interested in reading this book is those people who retired 60, 70-ish. And I asked myself the questions: what do they want from life? And what is the value proposition I'm giving them by reading this? Where would they hear about it? Who would recommend this book? who would they recommend this book? Who would they buy it as a present? What are their hobbies? Kind of dive into each persona and try to answer. Because from these answers, I would get knowledge of what to do and what would be the next step. Another thing in this plan was how would I communicate with this audience, be it those retired people, be it the caregivers, the old people's homes, the social workers, the caregivers. Another group would be people who just love reading books and follow up on new books. And also Israelis abroad, how would they address them, etc. So for each, I thought of the traditional media. Would it be television, radio, print, magazine, newspapers? Would it be online? Would it be social? Would it be podcast, etc., etc. And then I line everything just like you would do as a biz dev. And then I listed up all my assets. So naturally, there's the book, there's the novel, but there's also the research behind it. What I didn't tell you before is that while writing this book, I felt like it's out of place to write a Filipino woman without knowing what it means, culturally wise, anthropology. There's so many aspects. So I went out to the streets in Tel Aviv and interviewed 50 Filipino caregivers. I came up to them, started talking, befriended them. I went to their homes, to their place of work. I went to the old people's home where they worked with them. I went to the church, to the Filipino market. I did just the whole thing. I knew everything and everywhere they're interested in. There would, of course, be a website that I should build. What would it be? What would it hold? There's the social media, could be advertising, and also my ability to write, because that's an asset that I can use while marketing this book. So just for a bit of example, this is part of my website. So I didn't just have a blog with a lot of content and all the testimonials of people and the media clips that wrote about it. I also set up a Spotify account for each of the 4 leading characters. So you can visit the site, but you can also log on to Spotify and look for the songs that the 90 years old grandfather has or loves, and the Filipino caregiver. So these are songs in Tagalog, in Philippine language, and the songs of the 30 years old single man who's his the grandchild, and also the mother of the family, who's a woman 65 years old. So each has a wall. It's like a holistic approach of the book. There's the book, which is print or digital, and there's the website, but there's also Spotify, because there's another angle to get to know the characters, which I think completes a bigger world, something more holistic to enjoy. Another thing is the research that I mentioned. So Ynet, it's part of Yediot Achronot. It's one of the leading websites in Israel. They published a series of 3 columns of behind the scenes of the book. When I say they published, I mean I wrote. I mean I knocked on these doors. I found an editor whom I pitched the idea to, and then he pitched it to another one, and then I knocked on a few doors, and then I waited a bit, and then I nudged them, and then finally they took it. It didn't just happen. Like people always say, how did it happen? How did they hear about the story? No, they didn't. I called and I called and I called like you do. And these columns were amazing. I mean, I got a lot of traction. A lot of people called up and wrote so many moving things and a lot of attention. That was amazing. I mean, they placed it really, really high. I mean, this is part of it, but one of the columns reached underneath the headline, the main headline, it was very interesting content, because it was the behind the scene of the world of the transparent caregivers who live among us and we know nothing about them. So I had one of the columns about the motherhood stories, which was really moving, and another one about their financial orientation, financial literacy. They do a lot about how to save money, and they teach each other because they're here, or they relocate just for the money, to save money for the future of the kids. So it's really interesting to get to understand that. And another column was about happy endings and good positive stories, because sometimes it's not that bad, and sometimes there are stories that they marry a local and or their kids get green cards in the States and then they relocate there. A whole world of content. Another thing, sometimes there are free chapters of books, of digital books that are available through this site. And of course, people told me, oh, how did I hear about you? Okay, it's not like that. I called up the digital books. It's called Ivrit. So I called him up, the CEO of this platform, and I told him, I want to offer my book. How do I do that? And he said, you know what? It's not that difficult, but no one knows about that. I mean, it's not just you with your elbows pushing. Anyone who would have called me, I would actually give him the spot, but you just ask. So great, no problem. I'll do that. So that was an easy task for me, but it was kind of a good story to tell other authors who kind of think, you know what, I'm not blending money, elbows, I'm not asking anything. I just write and I do my art. I did my art as well. It took me 2 intensive years and 5 or 6 consecutive years of kind of putting it back in the drawer. I mean, I put my heart and sweat and a lot of money, but once I've done that, I kind of asked and kind of, knew where I'm going with it. Okay, so that was really nice to get to the front page and people could read freely the first chapter of the book. Another thing that people always tell you when we're talking about business or marketing is that you should become a thought leader and a domain expert. And I think I kind of did. Just recently, a few people told me, wow, you're like the expert of Filipino caregivers in Israel. And that's what I become, because not only did I research and interviewed 50 different women to get a sense of what they're going through, where they're headed, the motives, a lot about the culture. I also talk about it and I also share this knowledge. So that adds a lot of credibility and adds something to the book. It's not just the book, it's the behind the scene, it's below. I can tell you that Palawagan, the word in the middle, is a social way of in the Philippines where they collect together money and they give each month one of the groups, like 10 people, chip in $100, 100 US, and at the end of that month, one of them takes the money to do some renovation or some health medical care which they need. In the beginning, I thought it's like a pyramid or a scam, but it's not. It's just a way. It's not very sophisticated because they don't get interest. They just pile up a lot of money from each, and then each month someone else takes it. So it's a way to kind of assure that you're saving some money in a very, very solid way. Ampalaya on the right is a bitter root. It's from the melon family, and it's something that they use for medicine as well as like a vegetable in soups, and cross stitch, I think you all know. What else? Media, surprisingly, still works. And I got a lot of coverage because I asked for it, and I called up journalists and editors and I pitched my story, and I was in a magazine and in the newspapers and radio shows, all telling the stories each time from a different angle. Could be about motherhood, could be about caregivers, could be about the transparent people, could be about books and novels, etc., etc. But I also do a lot of social. Now I have some campaigns going on, and I also do Zooms and I give lectures, as I mentioned in the beginning. So it's for reading groups and book clubs around the world, could be the States, Israelis, or people with Jewish orientation who are interested in this book. It's not specifically about Israel or Jews, but still that's the way they know about it, and it's paid most of the times, and it's a way to get the word out. And also, as I mentioned, this is a product, so there's a whole world. There's the product, the different versions of it, digital, you can buy it online, and also these talks. Another thing is I build up relevant relationships, and the surprise here is the B2B and B2B2C. When I started with this plan, I listed up all the interested parties, and there are companies that sell direct to consumer products to do with caregivers, to do with elderly. And I reached out to their brand managers, and I told them about the book, and I told them about this lecture that I have and the whole world of knowledge that I hold. And we're still in negotiations. If you want a lecture, there are a few startups that reached out to get this lecture because they do something with wiring money to do with this, the Filipino or foreign immigrants working in Israel. So that was interesting for them. But it's a way, what I'm lying here is a way of looking at this book as much more than just a book. And these businesses are in the tip of a pyramid with many interested or relevant audience for myself, for this book. So that's why I'm reaching out and kind of, meeting more people and getting the word out. What else? I think these are a few of the fundamentals that I remember, that business development is always, and it has to be a combination of things, not just one. That's for starters, but it's different efforts. I do marketing, I do content, I do business development and opening doors. I do B2B and B2C. I'm trying and testing. When I come to my clients or when I work with startups, I cannot, it's just unprofessional to promise that one thing would for definitely be the right thing. You don't know until you try and you test and you kind of take time, you persist and you focus and you open your ears and eyes in terms of the book. So I kind of keep my eyes open on different opportunities as competitions, prizes for authors. I'm still an author, so I can pitch to that and kind of try my luck and see if that counts. Some funding opportunities, and it's not only timing, but it also takes time. I mean, it's not, magic. I don't know any author that by night someone said yes. They usually Harry Potter, so J.K. Rowling, I don't know how many publication houses she pitched to, but that's one of her stories. She said she was unemployed. She said it at a small cafe. It was raining, it was pouring, she was poor. It's a long story, but you have to kind of pave your way through it. Just before I'll reach out to your Q&A, which I'm very curious to hear. I crossed down what is my deferred dream, because it's not deferred. I'm doing it. And one of it is writing a sequel, the second book of this novel. I won't tell you how it ends, but it's just logical to get another one coming up. I'm working on getting it translated because I believe that there's a lot of people around the world, not only the Filipino caregivers or other nationalities who work so far from their homes, but also the people who ask for their help. Those 60 years old women or men who ask the help of a caregiver for their older elderly parents. So I think there would be a lot of interest, and it would be relevant because to do with motherhood and to do with parenting and to do with old age, it's just topics that people are very interested in. Another thing, I'm keeping it for the final slide. Whenever I pitch the idea, not as a pitching or a sell thing, but in the beginning, I talk with, have a good friend of mine who is a very senior editor in one of the biggest publications in Israel. And I told her, you know, it's about an old man. He's 19 years old, 90 years old, and he disappeared with his Filipino caregivers. At times I kind of said a few more sentences or not. And people always tell me, wow, this is so much television. Do you really want to write it? Don't you want to pitch it as a script? And I said, I'd love it to be on the screen, but it has to be a book because that's my deferred dream. So once it's out, I'm going to try and pitch it to television. And that's what I did for a few months now. And yesterday I got a contract from, it's not Netflix. It's just, yeah, this is getting you with a lot of FOMO. So it's not Netflix, but it's an international company. I have to dive into the details. It's going to be horrific, probably, the contract, but they want to make it to the screen. They want to make an adaptation. And they're kind of international companies. So that would be amazing. It could be in Hebrew, but maybe for other countries, and who knows? So fingers crossed, but it didn't just happen. And how did they know about me? No, they didn't. I called them and called them and called them, and I got so many no's. But no, in this time, I just got one no, and the second one was yes. But this is the way that there's no magic here. I mean, the magic is the processes. The magic is just continuing to do what you want and not giving up on your dreams. So that's me. And you can visit the site and you can connect me via LinkedIn. And I would love to hear from you and your thoughts.
Hey, Tovit, it's Eli. Thanks for the presentation. I think it was really inspiring and interesting how you combine those both worlds. Have you looked into translating the book into English and Philippine?
I forgot to say that I'm in touch with the Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines because, you know, that's B2B. We talked about it a bit. I started talking because they had a new representative there. I am looking into that. There's a need of a sponsor or kind of to see how I roll this, but I'm looking into different angles and always happy to hear your view and ideas. But that's a good angle. I know because I've spoken with them that they have translated the newest book of Edgar Carrett, I think last year, from Hebrew to the Philippines, but I think it was easier to Tagalog. I think it was easier for them because it was already in English. So they just did this gap, and it's not at all expensive over there, but to get it translated into English, it's a bigger and more expensive route. But that's where I'm heading. I mean, because in the Philippines, they read English as well, most of them. So that naturally would be the language. Yeah.
Thank you.
And congratulations, Tovit, on the contract and the progress. That's exciting. That's really exciting.
Thank you. It is. I think as much as I've expected and looked for the contract to arrive because it took so many weeks, I haven't even opened it yet because it came with the huge alert saying, you know, it might look very scary and very lawyerly and legal. So don't be scared and pick up the phone if you want some explanation. So I'm kind of, this is what I'm deferring. I'm just holding back because I'm still with the dream, with the Netflix. I don't want to give all my rights, so I don't really know what's inside, but I'm in the, I don't know, the honeymoon process of, yes, I got it. You know, it's going to be so long, I know. And at times it can just drop. They might sign, we will sign, everything would go clear, and then you need to pitch it. They would need to pitch it to television channels, etc. And I mean, these are years, but you know, you have to start somewhere, and you have to have a good partner with you. You can't go by yourself. This is not something I'm not into television and production by myself, but that's the first step. So thank you.
That's excellent. And actually, Mirel sent us a question. Thank you so much. How do you keep going after you hear no and no again?
Oh, wow. It's funny. In my second startup, I remember that I had a meeting at one of the Israeli leading banks with two very senior women there. And I told them about the startup and the process. And one thing really, really caught their eye and the ear. And they said, oh my God, how many meetings have you been to? And how many no's did you get? And I told them, well, stop counting. I mean, this is something that I always have. And they were so obsessed with how do I keep up? And I said, I don't know, it's just part of my nature. I think anyone in business development or probably sales for sure, you have the no. You start with the no, and you know, maybe you'll get a yes, and maybe that would come to a positive outcome. But it's not easy always, you know, for sure. I mean, I can say that when I get a no, I'm so ecstatic and happy and joy. No, it's really difficult. But I think I try to zoom out and say, okay, it's part of a process. And I try to remember the stuff that I did manage to do, like small success. And I have this, whenever I mentor someone, I tell them, you know, take out your sticky notes and the yellow pages and put in front of you on your computer, whatever tiny thing, you know, you got up in the morning, come on, you're alive. So that's nice. But there must be something right that you got along the way. There must be something good or nice. And it could be really, really tiny. I mean, in the beginning with the book, I got this, this is something just in front of my eyes. Someone read the interview and he sent me a letter written by hand, kind of a crazy handwriting. And he just recited everything I said in the interview. And he said, you being this successful and you having done that and that and that and that, and there was no bottom line. He just left his number. He didn't even say good luck or way to go. It was so strange. And I said, you know what, this is the first letter I got, and I'm hanging it in front of my eyes, and I'm just saying, this is success. Someone wrote, someone put an envelope, put it in the envelope, put a stamp and send it over. That must count for something. But with time, I got more concrete congratulations and letters like that. I mean, if you have any tiny yes, just hold on to that. And I just recently heard a podcast. I love climbing, rock climbing and bouldering. And there's a very good podcast called Climbing Gold. And one of the climbers there said that you have to split your eggs of happiness, because at one time he was injured and he couldn't climb. So he had nothing going on for him. So he had to develop other hobbies. So if you would have only one thing you're aiming for and then you get a no and you're all depressed, there's nothing going on for you. So you have to split your efforts as well, kind of thing. I was thinking, I want to get it translated. I want to get it on the screen. I want to have another book. I want people to read about it. I want them to buy. I want to make money out of it, God forbid. So there's not just one yes that I'm waiting for. I'm working on a few. And for each, I'm kind of trying few different aspects. I mean, the first company that I really want to produce it, that I really wanted, they just said no. And I'm like, what? I need to get an explanation. So I asked them why. And they said, you know, it's a small market. We don't really think it would fit. And I said, okay, at least I got a why no, an explanation. And then I reached out to another company and they said, yes, we want it. You're just in the right time. Great. We'd love it. So, I hope that helps. I mean, you have to have more than one dream maybe, and more than one path and more than one route to pursue. And you know, no's are just stepping away. It's not the end. Let me see. Down. Okay, so Robert, enjoy presentation. Thank you for the whole thing, self-publishing and handling all that information. Painting a tuches, nice. We managed. Book is in Dutch. Okay, any Dutch readers here could check out Robert's website. Thank you, Robert. Love the Yiddish Dutch.
You're welcome.
How is it going, the book?
Well, we sold almost everything we printed, but
Wow.
it's a niche market. You know, I went on a book tour in the Netherlands from synagogue to synagogue, and you know, that's where we sold most of the books. And we did some marketing via Facebook and wrote some articles, but it's a real small market. I mean, the Dutch speakers in Israel, there are not that many, and the Jewish Dutch speakers, but you know, Christians for Israel, they sold a lot of books for us too in Holland. They're very pro-Israel, but the stories are all written by Dutch immigrants into Israel. The youngest was 20 and the oldest was almost 90. So it's a pity I don't have a chance yet to translate it into English, but maybe one day I will.
The Fair Dreams.
Yeah, one of them. In the meantime, I write about my own life, so that's also taking up a lot of time. But it's fun. Writing is fun. It's always been, you know, I'm a business development and marketing person in the medical field, but writing has always been my hobby.
That's wonderful that you can combine and achieve. Great.
Yeah, do my best.
Great.
Well, I like your presentation.
Thank you so
I
much.
wish you lots of success and have it in multi languages. That would be nice.
Thank you. Starting with English, that would be amazing.
Okay. Enough.
Thank you. You as well.
Thanks.
Any other questions, dreams? Checking out.
Tovit, thank you so much. On behalf of Paul Merage and the Merage Institute, really, really appreciate you taking the time to enlighten our Merage tribe today. That was wonderful. Excellent. And I wish you much success on your journey, and hopefully I'll be able to see it on the screen. That would be amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And everyone who came. Great.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ellie, as always, for your amazing coordination and leadership in the Merage Talks. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye. Have a good night.
Bye.
Good day.